Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to turn my voice down here. This is the Natives in America podcast, and I'm your host, Benjamin Juan, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Sky Anto.
Yo, what's up?
There he is, people.
Doing? What's up? What's up?
Okay, we're back again, and we're having a pretty serious discussion. We'll see how it goes. I can't guarantee it's going to be a serious conversation, but it does seem to be a buzzword going on right now, and it does seem to be all over the damn news. People can't stop talking about it, and people are getting pretty upset about it. And Sky brought it to my attention. Not the subject, but we had this questionable ideology come up, and he brought it to my attention, and I was like, what? What's this about? Like, this makes no sense. So, most of our discussion, we're going to be talking about critical race theory, and I even have a few things brought up that are kind of waiting in the wings, waiting for me to pull the trigger on them. But Sky, why don't you tell us why we're talking about it? Like, what started you saying, "Hey, this happened," and then I'm like, we got to talk about it. So, can you catch us up to speed?
Okay, so the weeks are flying by, and we're not scrambling for ideas, but like in the middle of the week or tail end of the last week, we're like, hey, what should we talk about? And I threw it out there before I even looked into it. I seen the headline, and he was asking. I said, and it just so happened that Florida was like not approving like 44, almost half the books they weren't approving of because of what Bob mentioned, the critical race theory, and I don't know, it's just sort of stuck out in my brain as far as like textbooks and teaching and all the forms of education and everything's changing. So that was what I thought of first. I didn't even know what CRT is, and I'm still trying to understand it too, because it's pretty intellectual. Yeah, it's very that's very academia, and for some reason politics are getting in the way of how kids are learning. And, so I threw it out to Benjamin, just kind of seeing if he had heard anything, and I don't know, he just seemed to get really excited. So, and so he called me like, hey, what's this all about? And I was like, I don't even know nothing about it. I'm barely like starting to even just dissect what it was, but that's kind of where we're at now. I mean,
okay, all right. So I like to Google the definition. I always like starting there. So what you had mentioned to me was about math. I think it was math textbooks specifically. Yeah. But so I had at the time I had a slight idea what critical race theory was, and then when you said that a math book could be getting banned because of critical race theory or its involvement with it, I almost blew up. Like, I almost exploded. Like, this is math has nothing to do with race. I've always loved math and science. So I'm always science oriented, and math and science go hand in hand, and they really, it's a subject matter that is objective. Not so much subjective, like, oh, this is, I mean, sure, it has plenty of subjects, but I'm saying, like, it it stands on the outskirts. It doesn't get involved. It just explains our world around us, and it's how we keep track of stuff. It's how we count things. It's how we, measure. It's how we examine the world around us. And it does not, in any form, way, shape, or form, it does not involve, taking sides on race. So when you said a book was about to be banned, I blew up. I was like, what the fuck? Like, it has nothing to do with math. It has nothing to do with math. And since then, I've been thinking about it. I'm like, okay, where could this book have gone wrong, this textbook? And the only thing I can think of is it is the word problems. Like back in the day when we were little, it'd be like, if you went to the store and got 5 apples and 10 grapes, how many fruits would you have, or what kind of types of fruits you would have? So in that kind of context, I'm thinking, oh well, maybe they said some racist ass shit in there. Like where I'm still trying to rack my brain. Like, how the hell could critical race theory start getting math textbooks banned? Like, that's ridiculous. One has nothing to do with the other.
Yeah. But, for me, with science or math, the higher you go, the more you're kind of having to mature your thinking on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think, because the guy that was, was pretty much saying, they wanted the kids to learn how to solve the problem, not know how they feel about the problem. and it was just kind of very robotic, because, the highest math I ever got to do was probability, and that was almost like making the best guess, not even getting an exact answer. So it was having to really be it's not about what's right or wrong. It's kind of generally what's going to happen, you know, and with whatever information you're going to get. And so to think that there's stuff in these textbooks that, can teach a kid things, or almost kind of like erasing certain parts of math, even that too. Damn, what's in these books that is going to ruin math? Or make us think the way we're going to be in the future. Because first thing I thought of was this is a way to save money on books, because you're on computers now. And then I was like, well, maybe who's making the books? Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's the one brand that they're just funneling the money to, versus
maybe they make a history book, and because that got it all wrong, they're like, oh well, they also make all these other textbooks. Let's boycott this company.
Yeah, I don't know.
That might be it, but even that doesn't make sense. It's wrong. And when I heard that, what's going on right now is a lot. We bring this up all the time, is censorship, and there's a bunch of people jumping on this bandwagon to cancel stuff. There's a huge, we bring that up too, the cancel culture. There's blood in the water, and the sharks start coming, and they just start buzzing. They're like, there's a frenzy going on. And right now it's critical race theory. So,
there's a confusion on the sensitivity versus being
racism.
Honest, but even with that too, America comes from a dark place, even though we portray it as this almighty, firecracker, eating hot dogs, celebrating place. It's a lot of deaths and a lot of lies. Pretty much to kind of create this place, and some of that gets put in the books somehow. Even though when we were in school, we knew we weren't getting everything that happened. Like, even though, we did learn about stuff. I don't know. It's almost like, felt like in college we got the real deal of, at least a better take of what was going on. But, like, in some of these math books, I'm like, they're actually using historical. I think of even just like oil or water, just where water gets taken from, it's like you can use that in math and you can teach that. And maybe there are companies that are actually trying to put stuff in that is more helpful to the kids learning about all this racist stuff. All this, not racist stuff, but racist stuff. This mistreatment and kind of making a math problem out of it, but somehow the kids are smart, they're going to figure it out. So, we want that book in their access when we send them to school. But it's a kind of, I'm not saying it, I don't know. I guess, would there ever be a book that you wouldn't want a part of the school? If I was watching this book about, I think it was this, it's okay to be a unicorn. It was this really book about this unicorn all around a bunch of horses, and it was to be different, but someone else kind of saw it as they were saying, to be gay. And if they're putting this book in the library, kids are going to read it and they're going to want to be gay. So that way of thinking is kind of, I don't know, it just seems like, we're so, almost goes back to how protective of the kids are they being, or are they just using it as an excuse to do another thing?
So earlier you mentioned higher forms of education and maturing your thinking. And the way I've heard it put was that critical race theory is more college-level examinations of laws and sociology. So it's a very high-level form of examination of cultures and society and the laws that are put in place. So it's damn near law examination. And the fact that it's being taught or being used in a very, very young, with young people, it's kind of ridiculous.
That's what I saw it said, if you're going to ban CRT from grade school, you might as well ban open heart surgery, because it was just sort of
Jesus.
Just kind of the absurdity of it. Because it's such a up there, but I don't know, kids are smart.
Well, I got the definition lined up here, and I want to read it through. It's a big section, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me, but it does cover a little bit of both sides. So I think it is good to read the whole thing here, and it's about 3, maybe 4 paragraphs here, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to try to do it clearly, and we can discuss it as we go. But if you guys will bear with me, I know reading isn't fun, but the idea here is it's about examining. It's about examining our society and how racism has still kind of continued, or at least it feels like it, and that there are institutions in place and laws in place, legislation that basically... Whoa, what's that? Alright, hold on, people. I think my AC's on. And it's really freaking loud. Hold up.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello?
No, it's not. Never mind. Alright, hold on 1 second.
Are we there? Did you go? Minor difficulties.
Okay, sorry about that, people. I have this brand new generator. And
turned on?
Well, I've been using it to power the laptop and power the phone and all that, because it's like a giant charger, but it also has this like cooling fan when it gets overheated.
Oh.
And that was the first time I ever heard it, so it just now kicked on. It was really loud, like whoa. Okay, sorry about that, people. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the definition. If you guys will bear with me, because it's really important. I think I'll read through the first paragraph and we'll talk about it, and then we'll hit the next paragraph and we'll talk about it. Okay?
Okay.
So let me get a breath here. Okay. I'm drinking an energy drink, so my heart's starting to pound right now, so bear with me here, people. All right. Critical race theory is a cross-disciplinary intellectual and social movement of civil rights scholars and activists who seek to examine the intersection of race, society, and law in the United States, and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. For example, the CRT conceptual framework is one way to study racial bias in laws and institutions, such as the how and why of incarceration rates and how sentencing differs among racial groups in the United States. CRT is also used in sociology to explain social, political, and legal structures and power distribution through the lens of race. The word critical, in its name, is an academic term that refers to the critical thinking, critical theory, and scholarly criticism, rather than criticizing or blaming people. It first arose in the 1970s like other critical schools of thought, such as critical legal studies, which examines how legal rules protect the status quo. So, that first paragraph, that is some heavy stuff, and it really seems to me, just off of how heavy that paragraph is, that 3 and 5-year-olds should not be thinking that way. You know, they shouldn't be. This like we said, this is a much higher form of education and critical thinking, where I think children of a super young age would really be wondering, you know, simpler stuff. They wouldn't be going, oh well, let's examine these laws real quick and see how some of them might have a little bit of racist undertones and how this might affect our society. Like it's heavy duty stuff, you know. It started with civil rights, is what it said here, and it's about people like, and it did say scholars and activists who are seeking to examine the intersection of race, society, and law in the United States. So this is some heavy duty stuff, and what they're saying is, you know, after the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, this is some heavy stuff here. Basically, it's saying let's examine what's going on in our society past racism. It's like, all right, this are there laws out there that are protecting one race versus another, or are there people being incarcerated, like it mentioned that they're being incarcerated at different rates than other races? Like, it's like, why is there, one thing in place for one group of people when it should be, we're always chasing equality. We're always trying to make, the dream of America is equality. And what CRT is about is it's saying, why is there still inequality in our laws and in our society? And it's saying, let's examine it, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the problem with trying to ban, or like the books you already brought up, or like lesson plans and all that, the problem with banning critical race theory is that it's stopping the conversation. And really, that's what critical race theory is. It's about having a conversation about what's really going on in our laws and our society. It's like, why does it still feel different when we should all be equal? And again, it's about scholarly examination. It's not, oh, you're black and I'm white and there's a problem with that. It's more about stepping back and going, let's talk about it, and let's make this right. Now I'm gonna go on to the next paragraph here. So a key CRT concept, so critical race theory concept, is intersectionality, the way in which different forms of inequality and identity are affected by intersections of race, class, gender, and disability. Scholars of CRT view race as a social construct with no biological basis. So it's like we made it up. That it's examining that problem, that race is more of a it has no biological basis. So it's like what's in our DNA has nothing to do with the way our society starts viewing each other's. So one tenet of CRT is that racism and disparate racial outcomes are the result of complex, changing, and often subtle social and institutional dynamics, rather than explicit and intentional prejudices of individuals. So it's not really about racism or blaming stuff on each other. It's more about all these underlying, feelings that our society puts out there, And again, it's about examining that. So CRT scholars argue that the social and legal construction of race advances the interest of white people at the expense of people of color, and that the liberal notion of U.S. law as neutral plays a significant role in maintaining a racially unjust social order, where formerly colorblind laws continue to have racially discriminatory outcomes. That's pretty heavy duty. And again, why should the children be being hurt by all this? It's like, this is some advanced stuff here. It's kind of blowing my mind. Like I had to learn about this as we were going into it. I was like, I had an idea in my head of what critical race theory was, and then it turns out, no, it's not that. It's far bigger than what people are making it out to right now. Like right now, there seems to be a lot of like, oh, this is racist, we shouldn't talk about it. When really it's like, hey, let's talk about it and figure out why. Even after we're supposed to be neutral, like it said about our laws, they're supposed to be neutral, but still they wind up causing problems for different races. So it's like, well, let's examine why. Let's figure that out. It's actually about starting a conversation, and people are going, no, let's not talk about it, let's ban it. So there's...
earlier when you were talking about math, I was like, math has nothing to do with race, but like, you think it's interesting how they can use math as a way to start a conversation, and I mean, you're still getting math out of it, but it's also like, hey, let's talk about why this is the way it is. I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, how do you see that? Like,
well, it has it in the title, and I think that's what's throwing everybody off. Critical race. It says race.
mm-hmm.
And anytime the word or use of the word race comes into play, there's going to be people that are going to stand up and start shouting. And, you know, I think the people who probably have the most, I guess, right to start arguing in the beginning, and why it's becoming so hardcore, why the arguments are getting so big, is because it involves children, and it involves parenting, and it involves, shaping how people think about each other's.
Yeah.
And some people are worried that, if the wrong thing is said, or if they have a piss poor teacher, which again, let's remember, they're human. They're, they make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that people are they're freezing up, and they're going, no, I don't want anybody but me teaching my child about race. And I think that's really in general why people are so up in arms. It's like there's this fear getting built up, when really, I think critical race theory, where I'm at now, now that I've learned more about it, it's like this is an important thing.
Yeah. And
it makes people uncomfortable, but it's something we should be talking about. Now, I don't know if little children should be, examining laws, going after the origins of racism, because they're still super little children, and this is a very advanced subject, and it's very easy for it to be mishandled, misrepresented, and, lead people astray if they come at it from, a piss poor direction. So let's see here. I've got two more paragraphs here. I'm going to try to blow through it real quick, because what I did see here was they did kind of cover both sides, and then I've got like a little news clip from CNN and from the show that I just watched, that there's a scholarly lady named Kimberly Crenshaw, and she's deep in the movement of CRT, the critical race theory, and it's a clip of her talking about what it really is, and I'll play that in a second, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it. I think what I'll do is I'll put the mic or the phone as close as I can to the laptop, and hopefully it'll just pick it up. And I just want to say, for copyright laws and whatever, this is a clip that came from CNN, and it played on the John Oliver show. It's kind of like a comedy, satirical comedy show that's on HBO called Last Week Tonight, and he talks about what's going on in the news, and then he likes to bash it and make fun of it, but at the same time I think he always makes really good points, which is why I started with him. I knew it would be like a short snippet. So let's see here. Well, I think I'm done with the reading. Let's see here. Let me see if there's some part in here that kind of really stuck out. Okay, so CRT began in the United States in the post-civil rights era. It's as a 1960s landmark, civil rights laws were being eroded and schools were being resegregated, with racial inequalities persisting even after civil rights legislation was enacted. CRT scholars in the 1970s and 1980s began reworking and expanding critical legal studies. And that's really a college level thing. the critical legal studies. Like, that's what you would be studying if you wanted to become a lawyer.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be examining laws and how they affect the people and society. So, theories on class, economic structure and the law, to examine the role of U.S. law in perpetuating racism. CRT, a framework of analysis grounded in critical theory, originated in the mid-1970s in the writings of several American legal scholars, and then they name a whole bunch of scholars, including Kimberly Crenshaw, and then CRT draws from the work of thinkers, okay, and then I'll name these, okay, Antonio Gramsci, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, and W.E.B. Du Bois, as well as the Black Power, Chicano, and racial feminist movements of the 1960s and 1970s. Academic critics, okay, so this is the other side here. This is the people that are against it. Academic critics of CRT argue it is based on storytelling instead of evidence and reason. It rejects truth and merit and opposes liberalism. Okay? Since 2020, conservative U.S. lawmakers have sought to ban or restrict the instruction of CRT along with other anti-racism education in primary and secondary schools, as well as relevant training inside federal agencies. And advocates of such bans argue that CRT is anti-American, villainizes white people, and indoctrinates children. That comes up a lot, indoctrinating children. Advocates of such bans have been accused of misrepresenting the tenets and importance of CRT and of having the goal of broadly silencing discussions of racism, equality, social justice, and the history of race. So how about that? What do you think about that? So they're basically saying, so the people who are trying to ban it are saying, oh, we're making new little racists out of our children. We're making people feel bad about being white. And they're saying it's anti-American to do this, when really it's more about examining why racism is still going on, why laws that are supposed to be neutral are winding up causing racial divides. You know, so there's, you can always say, well, I want to say that these people truly do believe that banning it's the best way to go because it causes these problems. When in reality, critical race theory is more about figuring out why equality, true equality, doesn't exist. And it's about finding social justice for people who become victims of these quote-unquote neutral laws that wind up causing racial divides.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna play this clip, and it's gonna be a real quick one. And let's listen carefully here, because I really like how she put it. It's very clear, and I might have to play it twice in case it doesn't record so well. So here we go. Are you ready? Here we go.
Critical race theory just says, let's pay attention to what has happened in this country and how what has happened in this country is continuing to create differential outcomes so we can become that country that we say we are. So critical race theory is not anti-patriotic. In fact, it is more patriotic than those who are opposed to it, because we believe in the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendment. We believe in the promises of equality, and we know we can't get there if we can't confront and talk honestly about inequality. Yeah.
Boom. Did you get all that? Could you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Oh, sorry, I pulled the mic off the phone. Go ahead. You can hear it okay?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay.
I heard it.
I heard it, motherfucker. I heard it. Okay, so there you go. I thought she put it really well. I hope it records well so people can follow along. Let's see here. I had something else. So I had that, and then in case people were curious about the amendments that she talked about, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, I brought those up too.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I think where I'm coming from is I do feel like this is some heavy stuff to be putting on little kids.
Yeah.
But you also said that, you know, kids are smart. That, you know, we all at some point or another become aware of racism, and we become aware of our differences.
Mm-hmm.
And really, critical race theory is about examining those differences and examining why things feel a little different and examining our laws, and it's about starting a conversation.
Yeah.
So, what were you going to say before I cut you off?
And I was going to say, but like, when we're talking about the books, and it's like you could argue, I mean, pretty much say like, oh, that's critical race theory right there. Take it in between the lines and take that out, you know. But
yeah,
I don't know. It almost seems like it could be used as a reason to not go forward with, you know, publishing a book. Like,
yeah,
like, oh no, that's harmful for our kids. It's not gonna make the shelves. Get it out of there. And
jeez.
And it could not, or I don't know. It's just this censorship, or almost. It's not even. It's like pre-censorship.
Yeah.
They're still like trying to. I don't know, man. On one hand, I'm like, are they trying to dumb down the population by limiting the information that makes a kid wonder or think or even learn about why things are the way they are? I mean, I think that's a lot of it. What we're seeing is we're such in this world now where we're almost building identities, a second identity on the internet, and to kind of throw out a lot of these things, you know, it's like erasing, almost trying to erase a dark past, or erase like the mistakes, or I don't want to say mistakes, but like, yeah, I mean, just wrongdoings, mistreatments, unfair exchanges, you know, where let's take that out so they don't have to think about how they feel about it. But with math, I'm like, unless they have information on like math, like maybe calculus makes you think a certain type of way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I kind of had this story I wanted to tell, and it's kind of related to you too, because it's sort of how we linked up in our timelines.
Okay.
So when I was in 8th grade, and I always thought I struggled in math.
Uh-huh.
But I think I always wanted to, like, I was putting in the work to just get by.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I still don't know why this happened. Like, what was the reasoning behind it? Whether it was to make me need that extra time in it, or were they getting me ready for high school, or were they just, like, giving me an opportunity to go further? But, in 8th grade, I got to take algebra. And it was just a thing with the school where, yeah, you'll take algebra, and you're already building on your high school grade. That's how they sold it to me. And so I started my 8th grade year doing some high school algebra in town, in Tucson.
Uh-huh.
And then I ended up moving back to the res, and when I was taking my transcripts to Bible, it was like they said, "Oh, you're in high school because you're taking high school classes." But I'm like, I'm still in 8th grade. So there's I had to take some of the core 8th grade classes, like history or I don't know what it was, history and maybe I don't even know if it was English, but maybe it was language arts. But the rest is that you can take high school electives, and so I got to take art, and I was really just, I think the school is kind of like, I don't know if it's a difference whether we're on the res or in the city, but they were just sort of like, yeah, go ahead, go hang out with the high school kids. And so that's where I met Brooks in algebra. He was my algebra teacher, and he put in the time because I went to school and I always was there, so like I grasped math really good. There was always somebody there to teach me and be there. So being able to say I took the opportunity to do the algebra class kind of changed things when I moved out here. But it always kind of kept me ahead, because then that's where I met you in, I think it was calculus.
Yeah.
Or
I think it was pre-cal.
What's the one before? Is it trig?
I don't think it was a trigonometry class.
Hypotenuse and what is that math
I think it was the beginning of that. Yeah, that's trig for sure. And it's calculus. Like they kind of go hand in hand.
What's before calculus?
I remember it was Miss Hahn teaching it.
No, it was Grimes.
No.
Yeah.
Wait, then he was teaching us. It was algebra.
Yeah.
He was teaching algebra.
It was geometry. Geometry, I remember.
I was thinking geometry too, but I was like, no, that doesn't sound right. But then you brought up Grimes, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I think Grimes was teaching geometry.
That was the first class with you.
My education has obviously melted together.
But so I shared this because giving somebody access to, maybe a higher level of understanding or learning, or the next level, even like the idea of just saying, well, this is going to be a little harder, but you can do it, or you want to give you a chance to do it, because at least if you're not going to make it, you'll fall where you're supposed to be. And so for me, I had thought of it as like, well, I'll take on the challenge, and it worked out. Yeah. But
damn.
To be able to say, like, there's people, well, we always knew that was the case, but it's just like, now it's like, even before the books, it's like, almost the history of learning, like, all suddenly they're so critical of what they're putting in there. It's like they think they're gonna like, what are they scared of creating, or what are they trying to avoid? And like I said, a lot of it is just a dark place.
Yeah.
So when I thought of this, because like when I was thinking, like, did they just do that because maybe I needed to put in that extra work just to be where I was at the time, but me transferring to Bible, it was a different scenario, because it was like, oh, this kid is already done high school, just throw him over there. So I don't want to say I snuck in, but I kind of had a little bit of an advantage in my way of seeing it, because it was like, damn, this is pretty cool. I mean, even that teacher, our teacher, she was crazy. So gosh, she was pretty cool. And
yeah.
I don't know. It just was like, what opportunities are we robbing these kids by limiting what we're supposed to be telling them, or like, do we give the kids too much information, or I don't know. It seems like they're changing education because I don't know, like cursive. Like, remember, that was kind of a big deal. Like, everybody was learning cursive at some point in time, and then they decided, oh, it's not important. We don't need to teach this now.
Yeah.
Or it's taking too much time over the other stuff that we're supposed to be learning, and the standardized test that's coming up that we got to get ready for, we got to get stressed out about.
Yeah.
You know, it's
well,
I don't know.
I think you're hitting on some really good points, especially when you're saying trying to erase this dark history, you know, and by skipping over or banning, canceling, really is what's going on here. The canceling stuff. We're really robbing the kids of a full education. And maybe even some of those kids that maybe are missing that little bit of understanding, and maybe they're curious, oh, what about race and racism? And then we're like, oh, well, we don't talk about that. So now they're left to fend for themselves out in society, in the world, without being prepared at all to examine it. Yeah, man, there's a whitewashing going on, and you know, what I saw going on in a lot of these books that were being banned, it was, and I even heard like legislation was becoming a big part. People were trying to push laws right now while they have the support of the people who are pissed off and angry. So some of the things I saw was they use words like this, like teachers aren't allowed to teach subjects that make people uncomfortable. They're not allowed to pick subjects or teach subjects that make people feel bad about themselves. And that's ridiculous, you know? Sometimes we got to be made uncomfortable. And a good point that was made on the show I was just watching was that, you know, growing up and maturing is an uncomfortable process. You know, it's opening yourself up to self-examination and, like you said earlier, maturing your way of thinking. And to ban books that make you do that make you feel bad about yourself, or, you know, that make you uncomfortable, one thing that's going to lead to making kids soft, you know, like they're I'm protected from feelings, you know. It's like, oh, I'm protected from feeling bad about my race. Like it's like, okay, well, that's going to happen one way or another. And maybe if we're educating about it, we're taking the educational approach versus just going, no, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, we're basically creating this environment that will wind up being racist anyway, you know, or misunderstood and misrepresented. We're like, oh, well, we're not going to talk about that. So they're going to grow up feeling like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And, you know, then that's where the problems exist. That's where they start arising, where, well, you know, you play the race card and suddenly, no, everybody shuts up. You know, it's like, no, like, let's talk about it. Let's use some critical thinking and examine what's going on here.
Yeah.
And to cancel that, conversation, to ban that conversation, I think that's much more unconstitutional. Like, it's to be a country that seeks equality, you know, a country that wants to self-improve and to seek that place in the world where, you know, oh, let's get along. Oh, let's do that. Well, you can't reach that area, and it may be impossible to be 100% perfect, you know? But by limiting our tools to discuss it and to examine it, I think we'd be, you know, limiting ourselves, shortcutting the children. When you brought up saying, you you had a memory of us, I was hoping it was more towards being like being turned into the odd man out because of a subject that we wind up talking about. At the end of this video that I had watched, a couple of kids were talking about situations that they were put in because there was an improper approach, you know, or how people became uncomfortable automatically versus being put that way, being put in that position. So like the two kids that I saw talking were black kids. All right, they were black, and I think in school they started talking about slavery, and the way they put it was everybody stopped and kind of turned and looked at the only two black kids in the class. So it was like, okay, what they were getting at was that whether we talk about it or not, it's going to be in our faces, and it'll be in our faces for some more than others. You know, like some people are going to experience it whether we talk about it or not, because it's very obvious. You know, and when you were saying that kids are intelligent and they're going to be aware of it, I think approaching or talking about these subjects, the kids are already aware of it. This one other kid, he was saying, I'd much rather we all approach the subject together in a safe educational environment and we discuss it together instead of, saying, oh, well, in class we're not going to talk about it, when some individuals in that class will already be experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah.
So again, when you were talking about the dark past, I remember it was a humanities class, and again, like this type of education, this type of pain, this type of understanding came in college. I didn't even get it in the lower education areas. I mean, there was some, very little, and I even feel like the books we were reading, even then, it wasn't like we were little children. I think we were 7th grade, 8th grade, I think, maybe even freshmen in high school.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of puts us at like 14, 15, like, maybe that was late, where race and education about our history really started. And, damn it, I had a point. You were talking about hiding from the dark history. Well, I took a American Indian Studies class, and at first it was like, oh, well, this is one of my required classes, and since I'm Native, I want to learn more about it. And then the humanities class, it was like, well, that's going to satisfy, whatever on my route to the bachelor's degree. It'll satisfy prerequisites for other classes. Yeah. So I'm going to take it. And I remember I was reading books in the American Indian Studies class, and I was enraged. Like, I took my book and I chucked it at the wall, because what we were doing was we were reading this book, and it was basically talking about the crossing of America in the beginning as it crossed across the continent. And it seemed like every time the United States government and its people came into contact with native tribes, the result would always be the same. It'd be, hey, you're dangerous and we're afraid of you, so we're going to attack you and fight you. And then it was like, hey, we're going to keep you separate and put you in this little special area, and that'll make us all safe. And then it became, wait a minute, we made a mistake. You're on this very nice land with great water, or some sort of like, oh, there's uranium. Well, they weren't really mining uranium back then, but it was like, there's something we want. So then they went after him and said, okay, you got to move, you got to leave. And you have the option of staying and dying, or picking up and leaving and probably dying. And in the class, they were asking, oh, what happened with this treaty? Oh, what happened at this location? Oh, what happened in this state? What happened with this tribe, like the Cherokee? And it was like every single answer I had may have been talking about a different subject, but it was always the same result. The answer was always the same. Oh, the people got killed. People got forced out of their homes. They were land and property was taken, and then there was bloodshed and pain and suffering for these people that were different, and that just got me so pissed off that by the time I got to the very bottom of this assignment, I just wrote this. I think I wrote something like, "This shit is pissing me off. It's the same fucking answer. I'm done answering these," because I was so pissed off. I was like, this. It was a hard pill to swallow. I was like, damn it! Like, I couldn't answer differently for any one of these answers, and all I could do was reword it. Use the specific name of each part, but it was always the same answer, and I started getting really pissed off, and I was like, God damn it, like, this is happening. It happened. This is our history. This is our past. And even at a college level of education, what I was learning at the time, even at that level, I needed more understanding. And it was really hard to face and examine, and I was made uncomfortable, but it was like, damn it, if that were taken away from me now, that those moments of discomfort, I'd be robbed of becoming a more rounded up person. Like, I brought up the humanities class, and we went race to race in history, and it was like it talked about slaves, and it was like not just black slaves, but it was native slaves and the Chinese and the Japanese, and it was like we went race to race, and the guy, the instructor, told us in the beginning, you are going to cry, you are going to be made uncomfortable when we come to your race, so be prepared. And fuck, he was right. When it started talking about the history of Native America, it was painful, and I cried. I was sitting up front, and just tears were running down my face, and I was like, this is horrible. This is painful to face and examine, but it was educational. It was rounding me out. It made me... Well, a great part about it was, as we even went to other races, I saw the pain and suffering of people that went through damn near the same thing. And that was like a harmonizing, like, worldly view. It made me go, we weren't the only ones that got freaking murdered and destroyed in the process of creating this country. And I still feel, even after thinking about it from that point of view, I still feel like, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, it's probably a little early for that kind of shit to be talking about. But at some point, we do need to talk about it. And like whitewashing and banning, and kind of, another way I heard it called was dumbing down the history. is just not the way to go. It's like we're acting like slavery wasn't so bad, you know, or like the history between the United States government and Native Americans, natives, was not that bad. You know, these books are changing the history, and a lot of times it's in. You know, people use the idea like, oh, well, we don't want to make people uncomfortable, or, oh, our history isn't that bad, we're a great nation and country.
Yeah.
When really having that sort of education would open your eyes to the reality of the world. And not just for the United States history, but for the history of the world, and how every time a larger group of people come in contact with a smaller group, or a more advanced civilization comes in contact with a lesser advanced society, there's going to be destruction, and there's going to be, you know, one person comes out on top and the other group gets destroyed or conquered. And to deny that that's happened throughout the world and throughout our history, to deny that, I think would leave kids vulnerable. To be, you know, it's saying let's act like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Let's be unaware, and what's going to happen is some people are going to go through their world or their life thinking, oh, it's not that bad, and then another group of people are going to be like, we were freaking murdered and destroyed, and I'm angry about this. And then they come into contact with each other, and one group's just not going to understand why. Like, why are you so angry? It wasn't that bad. And, you know, that's no way to run the educational system. There's no way to, you know, we brought the saying up before. It's like if we, a people that does not learn from history is doomed to repeat it. And like we've been saying, like there's been a resegregating of our children. You know, we're repeating it. So this I think critical race theory is important, and I think at some point, maybe it's not for me to say when. I think it's more between the parents and their school that they choose. But at some point, damn it, we're gonna have to talk about it. And going through and banning books and making it impossible for educators to approach this issue, even though it's already in our faces, not being allowed to talk about it is one of the worst ideas in the world here. It's like, why would we make that illegal when we're talking about trying to have this high and mighty society of equality when we are not even talking about it? It's simply ridiculous.
Well, we're distracted by what was it, Will Smith and Chris Rock, you know. Where it's a big, I don't have to say it's a big can of worms, but it's almost like, as a whole, it is a big can of worms. And to open it, you're actually, having to discover that dark past. But then I think that's where it's like, it's almost like parents and the school, I don't know, it's almost like, what are you supposed to learn at school and what are you supposed to learn at home? And it's almost like this talking about identity and race and the country's dark past, and just almost like, you need to learn that at home. You know, you're just here to learn math, count. And kind of, I mean, I'm getting a lot of, when Hardy was on, when he was talking about just learning how to count and
yeah.
And with these computers, like, yeah, we're using technology, but are we really, the computer's doing the thinking? We're just pressing the numbers.
Yeah.
We're doing more of those tasks versus actually, like, yeah, why is it that way? I mean, or why do I feel this way on this particular storyline or with these people, and, you know, the parallels of what I'm feeling, and even the terms that we use to identify with, like, growing up in school, all the, like, you know, the box you check, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why is that important? Why do they need to know all that shit? But I don't know, it's like the humanities, and even at the U of A, like, they don't have a College of Humanities anymore.
What?
Like, it went away. Actually, before I got my degree in the College of Humanities, like, the next year it went away, and now English is under Social Behavioral, College of Social Behavioral Science. Yeah.
Whoa.
So it's almost like taking humanities, leaving education, because
Jesus.
I remember reading this article because you know, humanities is almost like it can almost like sell it as an elective. Like, do you really need to learn humanities in education in school? Is it important? I mean, it's really up to you to decide. But, like, when I was, you know, like, kind of getting closer to finishing my degree, I remember one of my instructors sent me this article about the importance of humanities and kind of learning about other cultures and seeing why, you know, there's similarities, but also the importance of knowing the differences and seeing, you know, the lessons and what people went through or what somebody endured. You know, you learn from those situations and time. And what the article was saying was, like, there's going to be a lot of jobs where you got to be a people person, and humanities is, like, kind of makes you that people person, because you're pretty much learning about people, their history, the musicians, everything that you can tie anything to humanity, because it's somewhere related to, you know, a person, a human being. And I don't know, it's just like, it's important, but I can see how somebody can say, nah, it's not a part of what we want the core to be, you know. So that makes me sad, saying that. But I also kind of still know the importance of humanities and kind of like doing those classes and actually, you know, gaining new perspective from you know, doing those, you know, deep diving into history, or I don't know, just like I said, like, humanities can be so many different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I was just saying, like, in the article, it was like, people that have a humanities background, it does look good on your resume because it kind of says, oh, well, we need somebody that has a background that can work with people. You know, I think that's kind of another thing that do you think people are pushing towards a world where we're not having to talk to people? You know, we're pretty much just engaging on the computer. Like the human contact, you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to put something out there. There's been a few times where I wondered if this virus was thought up in a think tank. And I was like, well, if we release this, we can get everybody to be afraid again. We can get everybody to stay in their houses and separate from each other's. And we can get everybody to be afraid enough not to want to go outside and not be interacting with, you know, let's say the police or the government or each other's. And like I've said before, like, okay, I don't want this to just become us. Like wearing a mask. I don't want that to be a regular thing, but it is. I've already been trained to the point where I go outside and I'm going to go in a store, I'm like, oh, where's my mask? And that's not what I want, man. It's not the world I want to live in. But some people out there might be pushing for that. And pushing for a new reality for us to be living in. One where we're scared as a society. Where we're scared to ask questions. Where we're scared to interact with somebody of a different color out of the fear of being racist. You know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I when people start talking to each other and the argument starts to happen and people wind up being cold or something, people call out, where's your humanity? And I think, you know, that's like the basis of a humanities class. It's finding that connection within each other, our humanness. Developing our humanness. And like you were saying about, well, I don't know if you said it, but it made me want to bring up being exposed. In those classes, I was sitting there and I'm crying, but I wasn't the only one in that room. Everybody in that room was now exposed to why I was crying. It wasn't just me crying. You know, it was, you know, pulling on our human strings. Pulling those tearjerkers, you know, it was all of us hurting together in a safe space, but we were hurting and learning about each other's cultures. And at the end of that class, like I've brought this class up before, and the reason I keep bringing it out is because it was so important to my education and my development as a human being. Yeah. And like you said, it makes you sad to think that might go away. And like Hardy was saying, are we developing automatons to be good workers? Or are we trying to raise human beings? And the sad fact is that I think we're, as a society, are leaning more towards the automaton. You know, or at least it appears that way in our education. Yeah. And I think what happens in the near future is going to be very important, the outcome of it. And all these people banning discomfort, banning talks and conversations. These people are pushing to stop the conversation about racial divide and inequality. And to be fighting against equality, to be fighting against open, logical conversation, critical thinking, I think it's really stupid. I think it's not smart. I think it's short-sighted. And I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have humanity at its core. And again, people in general keep talking about how America is this great nation, and how we go out into the world and we fight genocide and fight the oppressors. That's all fine and well, but to deny that there was ever genocide here, to deny that we didn't have our own oppression, that oppression's still going on and that genocide is still being attempted, to become oblivious to that and just look outward versus looking in, it's unfair, it's unequal, it's unrealistic.
It's almost like trying to hide your past, trying to uphold this mighty thing, and yet that's not the case. And I just see it as somebody trying to delete all their old pics that they had under. I mean, it's a very sad. Sad in the sense of a country where, and standing so tall that now we're seeing all this extra work to keep that mighty tall thing, still standing when it's standing on a lot of dark things. I keep saying dark things, but it's magically we have America, and
just disappeared. I don't know where.
Yeah, nothing bad happened.
Nothing happened.
Smooth transition, not even.
Yeah.
And you're trying to create, what is it, automatons?
Yeah.
You don't need them to know about genocide and killing.
Yeah.
You don't need to know about that. You just need to know how to do the computer.
Yeah.
That's all you gotta know.
Well, I don't know if I heard it correctly or not, but I feel like they had even stopped pushing writing in the standardized testing, or it was math. It was one of the. They had already eliminated music and arts. They eliminated physical education, and in the end, it was all right, they're going to push math, writing, and what else was it? There was three of them that they were really pushing on us. It was math, writing, and Jesus, that's how bad it is. It's worked. It's worked on me here.
Yeah.
Hold on. What was it, math? I keep wanting to say science, but that doesn't sound right. Because science too kind of has gotten its bad rap and is being pushed by the wayside. Help me out here, brother.
What, STEM?
Huh? No, well, yeah. There's some of that out there.
Language arts.
Is that okay? Math, writing, and language arts. Damn it. Anyway, there was three key components to our standardized testing, and I think they're even starting to eliminate. It was either writing or math that they were trying to stop the standardization. I can't imagine it's math because you still need to do accounting. You know, you still need people to. You still need workers to be able to go out and measure your roof. You know, but like that's just the sort of thing we're talking about here. Like it's eliminating a branch of our education and whole generations. Like you were saying about the closing of the humanities college.
Mm.
That means you were one of the last generation to have that exist in your education.
Yeah.
And that's
Pretty crazy.
just sad, man. Like I remember when I was picking out those classes, they were requirements for my degree. One of them was critical thinking. One was international. I think they called it like international, either international thinking or international exposure. And then another one was like critical writing. There was critical thinking, critical writing, and I think it was like international examination. And that's what the humanities class was. That's what the American Indian Studies class was. It was. I think one of them that I took, which was kind of cool. It wound up being not what I thought it was, but it was what the fuck was it? It was romanticism and sexuality in the Middle Ages.
Wow, nice.
And what it was like a heavy writing class. Like we did a lot of reading and we did a lot of writing about it. And I think it was like romanticism and sexuality in the Middle Ages. But it was a little more broad than that. And I learned a crap ton, like much more than I ever expected. But I guess my point is that it was about rounding out my education. It was about rounding out my exposure to the world around me. And I feel like I came out the better for it.
Mm-hmm.
So to eliminate things like that from education, and it's happening all the time, and this is the sort of stuff that does it, is this like, oh, let's ban critical race theory, let's ban books. It makes our world smaller. It makes the truth a more rare thing. It makes history smaller and less real to the point. And that just makes me sad, man. Makes me real sad. And I feel bad for the kids.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said earlier, it was like the outcome of this conversation, the outcome of this argument, the outcome of this legislation is going to decide where we're at after this. It's like it's we're this giant ship and we're going in one direction, and these decisions are turning it about. You know, it's going left or right here, and if we're not careful, we could be going in the wrong direction. Which I would say is a smaller, less truthful society that doesn't talk about our differences in a way that is educational.
Yeah.
And
or it's almost like not appropriate, making a place not so that it's not appropriate to discuss a lot of the dark shit.
Yeah.
That could be easily associated to the history, because it is the history of America. You know, it's like kind of it's almost like saying, well, we're learning here about math, so let's not talk about anything else that kind of relates to. Yeah, I guess it's so easily you can dismiss it.
Yes.
And just be like, that was a long time ago. You know?
Why are you bringing up old shit?
Yeah.
That's in the past, man. Let's look forward.
Obama.
Oh yeah. That was another thing that came out. It's like, how can we be racist? We elected Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. One thing that came up in that video too was everybody was quoting Dr. King. They're like, "Oh, judge me by the content of my character." And what was crazy was even Martin Luther King himself said that was a pretty. It was a lofty idea, and it might have even been like a utopian concept that, you know, it's not really set in reality. And he was saying that we needed to, that even after he read it, even after he said the speech that everybody's quoting, he's like, it kind of became a nightmare after that because, like, it was very lofty, it was very hopeful. But then in his own words, he was like, this might be unattainable or maybe a little too dreamy-eyed. Yeah. That we really need to sit down and have harder conversations versus just going, oh, we're all the same, or oh, we're all, you know, oh, judge me just by the content of my character. When he was like, we really need to sit down and have the deeper conversation.
Yeah.
Not just dismissing it as, oh, well, it's all in your character. Oh, it's all what you do. It was dismissive is kind of how he put it.
Yeah.
And
what do you call it? Like, oh, I don't see race.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God. Yes.
I don't see color.
Yeah.
Everybody's the same.
Yeah.
That's kind of easy to get. That's one way to get out of.
Yeah, it's dismissive. It's dismissive. Yeah. It says, "Oh, we're not talking about that." Oh, I don't see color. Like, yeah, you do. What was funny was there was this lady on one of these interviews, and she said, she was saying all those key points. She was like checking them off. Oh, I don't see color. Oh, Dr. King said this, and oh, like, you know, that racism doesn't exist here where we live. And then seconds later, the interviewer asked her, like, well, what happens when you come across somebody of a different race? And right away, it was like she flipped a switch. The lady's like, oh, well, if you're a black person and you dress a certain way and you get pulled over and you're disrespectful to that cop and you're getting arrested, it was like, wow, is that all black people to you? Like, what? She just flipped her switch, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, all black people dress this way. All black people are disrespectful to cops. And I was like, wow, lady, wow. Like, you said one thing, but you think another. And it was like, oh, I think a big problem with this whole cancel, and we've said this before, like censorship and this cancel culture, it's more about telling people you're not racist versus not being racist. You know, what do they call that? Your value broadcasting or something like that. It's like you're making sure everybody sees that you're not racist, even though you're racist, or like, you know, it's like, oh, I want to appear like I'm in support of this when really I think a different way. You know, it's like you can't, especially in today's society, it happens all the time. I see it all the time. It's like, oh, I'm going to film myself being nice to black people so that people think I'm nice to all black people. It's like you can't just go and do that and be that way and live that life. You have to film yourself so you have proof. It's like, oh, let me film myself going and giving money to the homeless. They don't just go and do it and don't care that anybody sees it. They're filming it, so they got proof. So that when somebody calls them out about their actions, it's like, no, I'm not like that. Look at my video. So it's like there's a lot of double standards going on here, and I'm really fearful for the future. You know, what kind of, like, and just like you said, it was like, oh, America just kind of happened. It just appeared. Nothing bad happened. Nothing horrible. You know, all right, maybe a little bad, but let's just not talk about it. And they're banning the conversation. I'm going to keep saying that. They're banning the conversation.
Yeah.
They're attempting.
They're not letting any segues that lead to the conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's what these books are. There's references that can get somebody to want to learn more or figure out why that is. And it's like, let's just sweep it under the rug and not talk about it. Yeah.
Let's make sure every conversation we have is comfortable. Let's not allow for discomfort. On a very simple subject, my son, he gets really hyped up, and he'll start throwing blows and punching, you know, and he does it without concern of any kind of blowback. And so whenever he hits his cousin or whoever, and their cousin comes to tell me, I'm like, I hope you hit him back. If he hit you, I hope you hit him back right away. And she's like, no, I didn't. I was like, well, you missed your opportunity now. Next time he hits you, hit him back, because I don't want my boy walking around thinking he can just throw blows wherever he goes and doesn't get his teeth kicked in for doing it. I'm like, boy, if you're going to act that way, you better be ready for the consequences. And if I were to be protecting him from ever being hit back, then he's going to grow up thinking it's okay. You know, and that like, yes, I'm bringing up fighting and all that, but it's like, okay, he's going to be exposed to the result of his actions.
Yeah.
Instead of going, oh, we're not going to talk about it, I'm like, boy, if you keep throwing blows, you're going to get your ass kicked. And that's just part of life. Life is going to kick your teeth in sometimes. You got to be ready for it. And the same goes for every subject. That it's a whole broad spectrum that we live in. It's this big open world. And to guard our children from being exposed to it it's just not the right way to go. It's like, this guys, like, we're gonna build a weak society with no understanding, no equality, no humanity. And it begins with these types of conversations, these types of cancellations, these types of banning and censorship. And that's not the world I want to live in. It's definitely not the world I want my kid living in. Like I said, I was like, I'd rather he get punched back than he just, you know, goes about life thinking, you know, it's all gravy. Because it's not. You know, it's not. And, you know, whitewashing our history makes people who, it makes children and people who think life is just gravy. That, like, oh, why are you crying about history? Nothing happened. It's like, why are these people so upset?
Yeah. We didn't do nothing wrong. Nothing in the books that.
Yeah. My book doesn't say all that. The book I was taught with, there's no such thing as racism. There's no such thing as struggle.
Or kind of the Thanksgiving, you know.
Ooh, yeah.
We settled that at Thanksgiving, I thought.
Yeah, it was all good. It was all good, man.
I thought we resolved that.
Hey, man, we're cool. We got Thanksgiving. Or we got a Native American month, so it's all gravy. Why are you so upset? The one thing I fucking hate hearing is, oh, you guys got casinos. It's all. Why are you complaining? You guys got casinos.
You don't pay taxes, or
yeah.
You get money every month.
Yeah. That's what I hear. Like, man, you guys should be like rolling in the dough. You got a casino. They always pay you guys. It's like, if that's your education or your way of thinking, you're completely numb and oblivious to the struggle. And that's where we're at, and that's where we're headed. You know? So, yeah, I cringe every time I hear that. Oh, you guys got the casinos. What do you have to complain about? Oof. Yeah.
Last week we were talking about, like, misquoting stuff and kind of maybe remembering things wrong because you saw it, like, in a different form, like maybe a film about it versus the actual thing. And so you're remembering the parody over the over the truth.
The Mandela effect, yeah.
And I don't know, just kind of got me thinking of, like, I don't know, just sort of, fucking with the truth. And not being what it was. And actually, I don't know, like, I think of, like, the prison industrial complex and even the westerns, and the idea of, like that, like genocide, like actually trying to get rid of native people in the Americas, like that.
Yeah.
That energy that was there, they were actually trying to get it done. And, with these films that everybody knows, John Wayne, I got beef with John Wayne, but, like, and all these films where, we're dying and we're not people, we're just props.
Yeah.
Being able to control how we tell our history in school, which, like, before even the idea of school, we were still getting educated, but we weren't getting it from a system like this, like what we do at school, where we go, we socialize. Like, we were doing our socializing, with our families, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just that idea of taking us all out, like, is it still there?
Yeah.
Because, again, like, we misquote things, we misremember things, and it's just easy to be like, they're just trying to forget us,
Yeah.
Like, it went from trying to taking us out to just, well, we're just going to forget you're here. And
whoa.
Forget that you're in the books. Like, taking you out. We don't talk about that.
Yeah. Well,
Which it's always been that way, but it's just, now it's almost like, oh, we're just going to take that part out.
Yeah.
And yeah, CRT.
We're going to omit it.
Yeah, we don't want to expose our kids to that type of education because it's too advanced,
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of makes me wonder, like, I always say, like, we feel like we're forced to go to school. We kind of are. But, like, after we get over that hump of, yeah, we're here, because we have to be here. Like, are we all trying to get the same thing? Or, it just seems like that evolved to what we're supposed to be doing. But over time, it's just getting us ready for whatever's next.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to follow the rules. Being able to say you could do something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I see it. That's what I see it as. The other day, man, one of the kids was like, "It's just a paper. It's your name on it." And I agreed in some sense of, yeah, it is. But I mean, you can't really give that kid an argument because they're trying to say they don't want to finish school or whatever. But it's like, you need a paper to show that you can start and finish something.
Mm.
So even though, yeah, it is just a paper with your name on it, it's also a paper that shows another person that, you know, you went through something and you didn't quit.
Yeah. Nice.
You walked it through. So it's an important piece of paper.
Yeah. Nicely put.
But I guess, you know, what we get out of that paper, no, I mean, are we supposed to get a certain limit out of it? You know? And it just seems like that with editing, or not editing, but banning the books, or not letting books make it through. Are we setting a limit on what kids are getting out of school?
Yeah.
You know, like,
no, we are.
Almost putting them at a disservice.
Yes.
Because
we're shortchanging them.
Yeah, you can't learn about that. I'm not comfortable with you learning that and knowing that right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it just seems like not enough people are in that position to be like, this book is going to make it, or this book's not going to make it. Like, that's not what people are interested in.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get through the system.
You know, another way, a perspective to take it is, what does our government expect of us? Do we want critical thinkers, or do we want workers? Do we want people to be able to think for themselves, or do we want them to think the way we want them to think?
Mm.
And again, you mentioned that paper is like, not only is it proof you could start and finish something, it's proof that you understand the concept well enough that you can talk about it.
Mm.
You can critically think about it. And what I've learned from all of this now is, you know, critical race theory is about critically thinking about the subject of inequality and social injustice. You know, it's like, it's really about thinking in depth about what our society is putting out there and how it relates to racism and civil injustice and inequality.
Mm.
And people are out there trying to ban it, trying to stop that conversation before it even starts. And you mentioned, you know, getting kids ready. It's like, by banning this conversation, by stopping the big, deep thoughts and talk, you're making these kids less ready.
Mm.
We're shortchanging the kids. And like in the definition, it was saying that it's not about blaming and accusing, you know, which is really what all these people are yelling and arguing about. They're blaming each other and accusing each other of racism and, indoctrinating children, getting them to think your way versus, the truth of how things really are. So they don't want it. They want to ban it. They want to stop it. And because it makes either them uncomfortable or they think it makes their children uncomfortable. And I think one of the people that was in the video, it was like a senator, and he brought up this imaginary girl. I mean, he was talking about it like it was the truth. He was saying this little girl came home and said she felt bad about being white. And instead of the parent going, "Oh, why? What did you learn today?" and then discussing it, which I think is the huge point here, is the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they're like, "Oh, well, we need to go to this school and ban them, get somebody fired." And and this senator he made this girl up basically, and it was proven. It was like no actual parent came forward and said this girl does not exist, but he used this girl as an example to push his agenda. He wanted to pass this legislation to ban critical race theory from schools, and he used a fake imaginary girl to do it.
Mm.
And it was like, okay, if my child came home and felt bad about who they were, that's where the discussion should begin. If it hasn't already, like if they weren't exposed to it, that conversation would never take place.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's like that. It's like I worry about what the school is teaching, but I'd be more worried if we are not having the conversation. If my child isn't thinking for themselves and about their fellow students.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's just like, is it sex ed,
Uh-huh.
People are thinking it's inappropriate, but, well, where are they going to learn it? Yeah, at home. But then, I think another thing, too, is, not everybody has, that structure, or,
For some kids, the classroom would be the only way they have that conversation.
Yeah.
For some of them. And if that's the case, now that they don't have sex ed, then that conversation just doesn't happen. Just doesn't exist. And now this kid's going to go out into the world and probably ruin their life. Or begin something that ruins someone else's life. It's like the conversation isn't taking place, and that's what really bothers me here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know why I brought up sex. I think it was more because it's like, some people can argue that it's appropriate. Others can say, no, I don't want my kid to be giving condoms at school. So it's like schools of thought on in that line, but like this whole critical race theory is almost like, I don't know, it's like, it's almost like, I don't know, like too easy to say for why you won't want to go for it with, putting a book out or something. Critical race theory, or, no, that's going to mess up my kid, so get it out of there.
Yeah. Well, it's the same deal. It's the same situation. something came along that made someone uncomfortable. They argued about it to the point that now it doesn't exist in school, and now some kid out there isn't going to be informed, isn't going to be ready, and they're going to go out into the world and make mistakes.
Mm. Yeah. I've been for about a couple months. I've been working with a younger group, playing basketball, and when they're young and they're just kind of just on the court, just like happy, smiling. It's fun, but like so easily a ball can just come your way and hit you in the face or something.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like we're passing the ball to each other, so you can't really just let your guard down and be like just running around.
Yeah.
And so there's like I hadn't said that in a while, but it's like there's basketballs flying around, so like you need to watch your face. If you're not guarded, then someone's gonna whack you in the head with a basketball.
Yeah.
Because they're either trying to pass it to you, or you're not aware that it's flying in your direction. But
yeah.
You can't just be willy-nilly on the court thinking it's all fun.
Yes.
You get hurt. But it was funny because it's like, at a young age, they're not thinking like that.
Yeah.
But over time, you kind of develop that, like, oh yeah, I still have to be ready at any time because the ball could come in my direction.
Yeah.
So.
And it took that conversation to realize that, or they got hit in the face with the ball.
Yeah. Or you gotta get hit
quite literally popped in the face.
Well, I guess I don't want them to learn that way, but
yeah,
that's what it comes down to. That boom.
By having the conversation, you could probably very easily prevent a bloody nose. I mean, this is a very literal interpretation here, but it's a perfect analogy for having kids unprepared in the world. You're going to get your nose bloodied if you're not ready for it. For things that are coming your way.
Yeah, flying in your direction.
Yeah. Very, very good story. Okay. Well, I think we've exhausted our conversation here. Like, I'm sure it could go on. And as you watch the news, everybody who's listening, maybe now you might have a clearer picture of what critical race theory is, I hope. And maybe you'll join the conversation either with your family, your kids, or the news, your community.
Mm-hmm. And
hopefully you're ready for that ball that's coming to hit you in the face. I've enjoyed this conversation. I think we've hit some good points.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think more stuff's going to come out, and maybe we'll have a part 2.
Yeah.
Other stuff to learn, but
yeah, we'll be watching the news.
What was interesting is there was no really clear example of why. It was just threw out that term to kind of just overlap all these books that weren't making it through. So it was like, it would have been nice to get more like examples on why they felt it was connected to that. Like,
I definitely wanted to hear the thinking behind that. Like, what are they basing that off of? It was ridiculous. When you told me, it was ridiculous. I was like, what? Like, what does math have to do with that? What does math have to do with any of that? And why would we even attempt to ban a math book? But, this is the world we live in here. It's crazy. And as I've said several times, sometimes this cancel culture is out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like, or having these fights is like, you know, having a loaded gun, but you know, whose hand is the gun in? And, you know, it's like, who's holding the gun?
Yeah.
Who's pulling the trigger? It's like I think there's a lot more going on here, and I even wonder if the people who are arguing their side even really know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. There's a lot of generalization going on, and they're pulling a lot of resources they're just piling it on.
Mm.
And they're a lot more interested in arguing their side than having the conversation and understanding that is required to really take on this subject. So I'm glad we're having it. Huh?
Dumbing down the generation. So.
Oh yeah, willingly too, willingly and probably even knowingly. They're completely. I think some of these people are completely aware of what they're doing, and they're doing it anyway. They're going forward with it. So everybody who's listening, let's pay attention to the news and see what's going on, because this is going to affect all of us, and it's definitely going to affect our future and our children. All right?
Yeah. Well, the education almost needs to be revived at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we can't really count on it at the school these days.
Damn. You said it. Well, there you go, people. This has been the Natives in America podcast, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
See you. Peace.
Peace.
Hit us up.
Peace.
Comment.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some comments and reactions to this. So we'll be listening to the lines there and keeping our ears open, and I think we both look forward to a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, good night, everybody.
Peace.